To answer your question a little bit more specifically, is behavior describes how people interact with one another inside an organization and as a business. So those interactions subsequently influence how the organization itself behaves and how well it performs.
And employees are so discombulated by the dysfunctional culture and organizational behavior that they're all quitting. They're quitting the profession. And as a result, America is going to be facing about 200,000 new nurse openings for the next 10 years or so. And the pipeline is not full.
Hospitals are having to shut down because nurses are going on strike because they're being overworked, underpaid, but they're not being engaged correctly and they're not being appreciated correctly by these hospitals.
Wouldn't we love as business owners to have employees that not only were self-actualizing, but they were also looking out for the needs of others and serving other people? And so we see this with the I think what you're talking about with pilots or nurses, teachers. These are jobs where they have to be thinking of others, and if their bosses or the organization they work for is so detrimental to their psyche, it's very hard for them to keep coming back to work every day. I think it's valuable too for organizations to invest into leaders at all the different levels. You know, even within a very strong hierarchy system, if you're really investing in placing leaders at each of those levels, you can get a lot more of that employee engagement within each level, because you could do really well, let's say at the top levels and the bottom levels, but if your middle management staff is not engaged, that can derail an organization as well. We want to have our employees, our workers, even our gig workers, want to come to our organizations and work because it's a great place to work. A great place to work happens when employees are engaged, they're emotionally invested with the mission of the company, and they are getting satisfied. They're being satisfied by some of those inner needs Robert's talking about. Welcome back to the New World of Work podcast. We're excited to have you guys back with us. If you're watching us on YouTube, we'd appreciate if you subscribe, comment, like on that. We also have audio podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Feel free to subscribe to those podcasts and leave a 5-star review for us. We really appreciate those of you that have continued to view and comment on our podcast. So today's episode is on organizational culture and behavior, organizational behavior in the digital age, where things of the digital age has even put a big pressure points on organizations and the way they behave. And we have with us today Robert Ramirez. He wrote the chapter in our book, The New World of Work, on this topic. We also have Dr. Bob Biswas along as well. So Robert, go ahead and start us off with just describing what is organizational behavior.
Thank you, Bill and Dr. Bob. So, before we get started, I just wanted to say that things are changing very quickly, right? And we see that just as an example, over 50 years ago, we had this first space landing on the moon. But in our phones, currently, our phones are 100,000 times faster than the processing power that was on the spaceship that landed on the moon. So things are changing really quickly. And to put things in a nutshell, leadership and management and culture isn't changing as quick as the businesses need to change to keep up with the technology. So as a result of that, we've got huge problems out there. We're just watching on the news where hospitals are having to shut down because nurses are going on strike because they're being overworked, underpaid, but they're not being engaged correctly and they're not being appreciated correctly by these hospitals. They can't get enough pilots to fly the planes, right? So we've got huge issues currently going on, and these things can be resolved. And we talk about all these issues in our book. So we know that the most important thing, the most important assets that we have is people. People is the most important asset that any business has. So we have to change the way leadership manages our people. So to answer your question a little bit more specifically, is behavior describes how people interact with one another inside an organization and as a business. So those interactions subsequently influence how the organization itself behaves and how well it performs. So
Yeah, Dr. Bob, you see the problems that Robert is describing in the world today too.
Yeah, this problem that Robert is describing is really being highlighted in the television news. As I watched yesterday, CNBC News, and they were talking about the problem that Minnesota is having now with nurses in the hospital, 13
mhm.
hospitals. The nurses are planning to go on strike, and all of the issues, wages is one of them, but wages is not the top issue today. It's the organizational culture, employee engagement, the, their relationship between employee and managers, and the organizational behavior and culture that exists in these hospitals. And employees are so discombulated by the dysfunctional culture and organizational behavior that they're all quitting. They're quitting the profession. And as a result, America is going to be facing about 200,000 new nurse openings for the next 10 years or so. And the pipeline is not full. So this is a crisis now, organizational behavior and organizational culture. And we are, the three of us with this book, we have researched these areas in great depth, and we have a specific path where organizations can follow and can use to diagnose these problems and then implement specific solutions to address these issues, thereby reducing the tension that exists in employee relations today in the American workplace.
And Dr. Bob, I just wanted to add to that real quick. You know, we had spoken before how over 10,000 baby boomers retire every day. These are the leaders of today, and they're skilled workers as well. So not only is it nurses and pilots, it's also our teachers. I was reading an article just the other day how we're not going to have any teachers to teach our young kids moving forward. So something does have to change.
And
Yeah,
the point to emphasize here, it's not just wages or what I call extrinsic rewards. The people, extrinsic rewards are monetary economic rewards. The people today are expressing high dissatisfaction with intrinsic rewards.
Mhm.
And that centers around the topic of our podcast today, organizational behavior and corporate culture, the culture that exists in organizations. The human side of the enterprise needs to be fixed. And we, the three of us, spending so many hours researching all the topics in the book, have so called, if we might say that, become so called experts in this field. And we have the capability with various specific diagnostic tools to help organizations decipher what the issue with the pain points are and put in specific solutions to address these issues in a big strategic manner.
yeah. I was talking to a colleague yesterday about Frederick Winslow Taylor. This is a scientific management theory from the original Industrial Revolution, and I thought back to that of how the military has hierarchies and they set up these structures, command and control. Frederick Wendell Taylor created these same org charts within organizations. And then I also have a background in K-12 education. The original setup for the bell systems, the bell schedules, is based off factory bells ringing. And so we have in our current world, some of our organizational behavior dates back 150 years ago,
Hmm.
and we haven't updated those things. And so it's
Right.
not that there's a lack of people that want to fly airplanes, right? And there's plenty of pilots that want to fly airplanes, but they don't want to be abused in the process of going to their job and doing those things.
You know,
It's the human side of the enterprise, the human side of the enterprise. Doug McGregor in the 1960s wrote a very seminal book titled The Human Side of the Enterprise. It is now high time with this current work environment and employee relations environment in America, a new chapter in the human side of the enterprise be introduced. And our book is the human side of the enterprise 2.0, so to speak. And we combined our brain powers, three of us, and have discussed this issue at great length. In each of our chapters, we provide specific solutions to improve the employee relations environment in corporate America.
Yeah, and Robert, in the chapter you wrote about the motivational theories before the digital age, right about what Dr. Bob is talking about with Douglas McGregor's book. There was a time where those type of motivational methods worked on our workforces. What are some examples of that?
well, one of the best well-known motivational theorists was Abraham Maslow. And don't know if you remember Abraham Maslow, but he had it right. He talks about five, was it five, six, one, two, three, four, five, I think five different levels of needs. Basically the bottom was physiological needs, where people need their food, water, and shelter, and for essential survival. Right now in our society, most people have that. And then secondly, the next layer right above that was safety needs. We want to feel safe and secure at home. And then after that, he addressed the social needs and the desire to be loved and welcomed and included in a group. And then he talked about self esteem above that, which was self respect and the sense of status and importance, at work to feel good about yourself. And then at the top, very top level, was the self actualization level, the desire to reach one's full potential. Well, we're at that point now where people have those other needs that have been met, and we have to reach our full potential. So that's where we're at now. Um,
Yeah, I would say too. As a professor, and in my past roles where I was a manager, I would carry along Maslow's theory with me before the digital age, right? So I notice a student that may be having a problem at home, or they're having to move out of their apartment, and so they're trying to find somewhere to live, and they're reaching out to me and saying, "Professor, I have this going on." Well, it was really hard for them to write a really good course project if they were concerned about
mhm.
where they were going to live that night. And so I understood that, and I gave empathy to them to that. Or you may have somebody that is going through a divorce that works for you. And what you guys were describing earlier about the what the nurses are feeling, they're not feeling appreciated, and so they're not able to be their very best self. Or even, I think Dr. Bob, you've talked about transcendency, where you go beyond yourself even. Wouldn't we love as business owners to have employees that not only were self-actualizing, but they were also looking out for the needs of others and serving other people? And so we see this with the I think what you're talking about with pilots or nurses, teachers, they are these are jobs where they have to be thinking of others. And if their bosses or the organization they work for is so detrimental to their psyche, it's very hard for them to keep coming back to work every day.
I think, Bill and Bob, there are tools available, not usually uh, common sense tools to attack these issues that the organizations are facing now with the great resignation. There are tools that get more involvement and engagement of employees. But the leadership of organizations, both public and private, and all sorts of organizations, have to now educate themselves with the help of experts in the field and consider implementing these innovative practices that completely changes the paradigm and makes organizations more human and and the culture more collaborative, etc., so that employees feel engaged and feel empowered and are willing to carry on with the organization, put their best foot forward for the organization instead of being upset, dissatisfied, disengaged, and ready to leave. And businesses have to realize that the business model has to be reinvented. The business model, the economic business model has for a couple of decades being led with shareholder satisfaction as the leading variable. Shareholder satisfaction. Show me the money,
Mhm.
okay, a satisfaction. And then shareholder satisfaction being the leading variable, and the lagging variables were mm, a customer satisfaction, and finally employee satisfaction. Organizational leaderships have to realize that this paradigm has shifted, and the business model should start with employee satisfaction and employee engagement first. And then, if you have satisfied and engaged employees, then the customers will be satisfied by those employees, like nurses. If nurses are satisfied, engaged, committed, then they will satisfy patients, and then patients are satisfied, then will the organization, a stakeholder satisfaction, shareholder satisfaction follow. It's too long where organizations have led with shareholder satisfaction as the leading variable, where it should be employee satisfaction, employee engagement, etc. And there
Yeah.
are ways to make that transition. Organizational behavior and corporate culture interventions can be implemented to change that paradigm
Uh,
by
you're right.
organizations who are serious about solving this issue today.
There was a famous psychologist. His name was Frederick Hertzberg. You guys probably heard of him, but he talked about all the things that you just got through saying. He said the most important factors were for for employees was that feeling of achievement, um, that they were recognized as people, that the job was to be interesting to them. You know, they wanted growth opportunities and advancement opportunities, uh, importance and responsibility. So it's all those things. But to go a little bit further with what you said, the way to do this is we've got to turn the organization upside down, because with the speed of how quickly businesses are changing, it takes too long for a decision to go from the president down to the vice president, down to the directors, down to the managers, to the supervisors, and then then the employees. Right? You can't. Nothing can happen quickly that way. So we have to invert that pyramid and give the employees and the workers the autonomy to make decisions and to work together as a cohesive group and feed the information back up. So the leaderships, they present us with the goals, but let the staff of workers figure out how to get there. and work together. So we have to turn that upside down. No longer being a flat organization where we can all work together and not waiting for leadership to dictate down what they want. It's
Robert, I agree with everything you say. But from my perspective, talking about the subject, it seems leadership, CEOs, C-level executives have to realize that they have to make a organizational transition, okay, cultural transition, and therefore they need to engage organizational specialists and experts to come in and diagnose the organization in detail of what these pain points are throughout the organization through systematic data collection methodology. Okay, and we're taking that data bottom up from the bottom up, finding out what the pain points are within that particular organization in these areas, the human side of the enterprise areas, and then work clearly laying action items, action plans to address these pain points and make these solutions. This type of project, which I call an organizational intervention study, is now really paramount, should be happening. Every organization to be taking these steps so that they can reverse the trend of employee departure, reverse the trends of the great resignation, to make their workplace more accommodating, well focused on the well-being of employees and the engagement and satisfaction of employees. As I said before, if organizations do that, then their business model will work more effectively when they put the employees first and work on the satisfaction of employees. That will lead to customer satisfaction, which will then lead to shareholder satisfaction. So, from a business economic point of view, these types of organizational intervention studies, organizational remedial studies, are really strategically of paramount importance today.
yeah.
I think it's valuable too for organizations to build, invest into leaders at all the different levels. You know, even within a very strong hierarchy system, if you're really investing in placing leaders at each of those levels, you can get a lot more of that employee engagement within each level. Because you could do really well, let's say at the top levels and the bottom levels, but if your middle management staff is not engaged, that can derail an organization as well. And so I think we've been talking a lot about people leadership being the solution. That's what you just described, Dr. Bob, and Robert. You're within organizational behavior specifically. What can people leaders do to kind of help out there?
Before
Well,
you do that, I think that what is the paramount importance, Bill, is, as you know, because you're a business professor, the first step in changing the paradigm, in you know, changing the direction of the organization and really solving these great resignation issues is to have an expert come in and diagnose the organization systematically using organizational intervention tactics, diagnostic tools, diagnose these organizations to really pinpoint what the real issues are within the organization. Is it leadership? Is it culture or whatever it is?
yeah.
Pinpoint these issues and then implement remedial actions and programs and plans to solve those issues. This is a business solution imperative. Otherwise, organizations are going to find their basic survival is at risk because they cannot keep and engage their employees. Employees are leaving them in droves. That is a business problem that needs to be solved using organizational behavior and cultural intelligence techniques, intervention techniques.
I agree with you, Dr. Bob. That's number one. Number one on the list would be to make your team feel valued and engaged. Right? You got to make each individual feel that. So, what can leaders do? One, they could start with making sure that they have clear and targeted objectives for what the goals are of the company, and then to empower those employees to work on those goals. And they have to do that through very effective communication because they have to be very explicit about the mission, the vision, and the goals of the company. And then they have to really dive deeper, as you were suggesting, Dr. Bob, is really from a perspective of knowing your employees and how to engage them, how to praise them, how to give them recognition, because it's no longer at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, safety needs and food needs. We're at the top of the pyramid now, where we have to inspire them. So to work, so leaders have to work together to inspire from the heart each one of their staff members to work together and to build something.
I
And
think when we are talking about, especially in our book, that the world has changed.
mhm,
The world is faced with all these uh, employee relations issues right now. Mm. The nature of the workforce has changed. The nature of work has changed. All of these things have changed. In the human side of the enterprise, there's a lot of change right now. Okay, since the COVID-19 crisis, and it's being felt by many organizations, airlines, hospitals, many others also. So there needs to be a systemic approach to this, okay, to the people side, human side of the enterprise. We talk about a different people mm, people engagement process or a different new model for the human side of the enterprise for organizations called the human asset lifecycle model, okay, where the way we organizations handle their people resources takes is subjected to a re-engineering process and to address the current issues in the workplace. So therefore, those who read our books and buy our books, read our books, and we are also available to help in other ways also organizations to rethink their people processes in a big way.
Yeah, and I think you're right that just to say this to tell the CEO, or if you're a CEO, and just say, I think I want to implement these things. Um, it may be the things that you need to fix are not so obvious, and maybe some of the employees are a little. There's a breakdown of trust, even, and so, like Dr. Bob is talking, we have these tools that can ascertain some of those pain points in an anonymous way, where employees really have a voice towards solutions. And when the management team listens to those things, provides those solutions, and really has a change of heart on their approach, we see organizations really starting to become healthy, and they start to look at their leaders as people leaders rather than leaders that the organization has bought and paid for. And so, as well, we want to have our employees, our workers, even our gig workers, want to come to our organizations and work because it's a great place to work. A great place to work happens when employees are engaged, they're emotionally invested with the mission of the company,
mhm.
and they are getting satisfied. They're being satisfied by some of those inner needs Robert's talking about. So, Robert, any closing thoughts?
So we've given you a lot to ponder on, a lot to think about. We talked about the speed of change and how leadership, one person at the top cannot keep up with that. We talked about what do we need to do? We need to empower our employees. We need to have a flat organization, and 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 we need to look at that top level of Maslow's hierarchy. We talked about all those things, but as Dr. Bob said, in order to do that, you really have to go in and dig deep into the organization and talk with the employees and staff. and then come up with that plan to radically change the organization in order to keep up with all the changes that are happening.
And
Yeah. So
to piggyback on what Bob is saying, our unique approach to this is not a best practice approach. What is working in other organizations might not work in your organization. Hmm? With our diagnostic approach to the organizational behavior, organizational design, and our cultural intelligence issues, with our diagnostic approach, we'll diagnose organization. There needs to be an organizational diagnosis. And based on diagnosis, best fit practices have to be implemented. Not best practices, but best fit practices. Because what practice works in one organization might not work in your organization. So we have a unique approach with this human asset lifecycle model where we can diagnose the organization and find those practices, the best practices that fit that particular hospital, fit that particular airline, and implement and then proceed to implement those best fit practices. And
yes.
that's the problem, the real problem in
So
organization.
So if you want to connect with us, you can go to our website at New World People Specialists. If you hit the connect link right here, you'll see there's all sorts of ways to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube channel. But you'll also be able to connect directly with us, each one of us on LinkedIn, and message us directly. But we thank you guys all again for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thank you, Dr. Robert and Dr. Bob, once again.
See you next week. Thank you.
See you good. Bye bye.